12,000 skill power modifier a second. That's what Luna is capable of. Single point target damage, too. And she can do it to multiple enemies. Crazy. The most fun build I've ever played in TFT, and my favorite new Descendant. I don't say this often, but I really do think she is the best to play. Serena and her are very close in terms of power output. I'll go into that later. But of course, Ult Luna. Everyone has been waiting, and today we have a very long video, so let's get into it. We have Ultimate Luna. I will go into her base kit first. Feel free to skip if you already know everything about this. Ultimate Luna's base kit. We have her passive. This is an inspiration gauge. What the inspiration gauge does is you fill it up, and once you fill it up, you can use her final song. She has a unique weapon called Stage Presence. This unique weapon is modified by the modules on your main weapon. The only things that matter are magazine size, fire rate. Now, there are some ultimate mods that matter as well as Analysis Master. This one's everyone's favorite debuff because it helps out everyone in the party. If you're going base Luna, you're basically playing a buff character, so you do want this in the base party. You have these notes that pop up, and you do have to time them, and every time you switch, you do switch the song. Once you get to maximum inspiration, you can activate whichever note you like. She is a buff character, and she does feel a little slow if you're on her base kit. Now, the base kit isn't really as useful as it used to be, just simply because of power creep, but I'm going over it anyway, just so you know. If you miss your shots, you lose MP. The duration is based on you continuing that shot, and if you don't shoot enough, you just get exited out of the skill. Now, you do want to proc Perfect Pitch if you're doing damage on the base kit, because it adds 2% skill power modifier to your abilities. So you get max stacks at 13. This gives you a 26% increase to your skill power modifier. And whether you're playing damage Luna or buff Luna, this does help out the party. Unless you're playing only buff Luna, then your damage doesn't matter. Every time you hit a song, you get 10 shots back. So make sure you cycle through your songs and make sure you get your shots back so that you can activate the final ability. The final song is basically what you're after in every single note. You'll notice on the enhanced exciting performance, that buff has 2 little arrows to it, and then on the exciting performance, you get 1 arrow. This is just to discern what buffs you have. The exciting enhanced sound, this one has the little thing on the bottom of the circle. So the skill power increase gives you an extra increase of 35% to your base. You'll see this plus mark. This means your base is increased. If you go in, every Descendant has a different base, so some Descendants will be good, some will be bad. If you want to look at a lot of old stuff for Luna that's kind of outdated now, I'll go ahead and link my old Luna video into this description, and you can still do that. But her new kit isn't so much as a buffing tool as it is a damage output. You do buff firearms on her new kit, though. And then her second ability is for regening MP, and her fourth ability is to get faster cycles of the final song back, as well as increasing the cooldown rate. You can see right here, it says cooldown increase minus 40%. This just increases the cooldown as you would expect on all of your allies. The reason this build is so outdated now is just because of arc tuning. Almost everyone has almost maxed out cooldown if they need cooldown, but there are some pretty interesting team comps if you have friends that are willing to build for your parties. We've done one-shot Kyles, we've done crit Frenas, it's all been a good time. The cheerful performance here, this is typically how you would start a lot of fights, just to get your inspiration gauge up fast, and then you can buff your allies. The Transcendent mod Noise Surge, what this does is it turns your Descendant into more of a skill Descendant, and you just do area damage and become a discount bunny. If you miss your notes on anything of the basic kit, you'll have a long cooldown on your abilities, so time your notes well and play DDR the best. On this one, you just want to make sure that you maintain all of your stacks. Largo down here, the Crescendo down here, and the Forte down here. You can see all the stacks to the left of Luna, and once you get up the stacks, you can actually have a pretty good time with basic Luna. Nimble Footsteps, it basically just gives you a head start on your range builds, and it starts you off with Vivus whenever you can get up to the max stacks of 20. You just get a movement speed increase, and you get a skill range increase to save you mod slots on your build. And this is solely for buff Luna. So if you're still trying to do buff Luna, honestly, this basic Nimble Footstep builds is still the best build for crit buffing your allies. We have Aggressive Melody, which changes your second and your fourth ability to increase weak point damage and increase firearm attack and critical hit rate and damage on firearm buff Luna. The only problem with this is that the new one basically gives you the same amount of damage increase to your allies and lets you shoot a gun. So this isn't really useful if you have Ultimate Luna. Now, the new modules. We have Battlefield Concert. What Battlefield Concert does is it changes all of your stuff into a floating platform, turning her into a portable DJ, basically. You'll see the arrows up top. Whenever you're accessing the skills to use, all you have to do is make sure not to try to press the button too fast. You still have to time your notes correctly, but whenever you fail those notes, it's fine. As you can see, I'm not really failing the notes unless I try to do it too fast. Other than that, that is how to get the inspiration gauge. The inspiration gauge, it does have RNG to it, so it is important to note that you won't have a rhyme or reason why you're getting gauge. The chance to gain it on a successful hit, which is your gun, and the chance to get it on a successful skill use, timing your notes correctly. Either one of these count as note success, and those are the percentage chances. However, if you're just trying to shoot them, you will gain inspiration gauge based off of your RNG hits, but if you don't want to lose mana, which it's not that big of a deal if you copy my build, you can always time your shots to not even lose the mana. This will help you while you're building Luna. And then once you get to your maximum gauge, you can see that you deal basic damage over time, and you get a fancy laser beam. The laser beam happens anyway. The fancy laser beam is called Fever Time, and the Fever Time will give you an extra skill power usage of 1700 to the enemies just in front of you. You want to get your gauge up, and if you try to do it too fast, you end up with a cooldown, which it's not that bad, but you can see you get Fever Time, and while you're in the Fever Time, what Fever Time does, it lets you spam your lasers and not spend any mana. It is important to note that when you're aiming down through Fever Time or any time with Luna, if you aim down sights, you can target weak points, and it doesn't just auto hit the boss. If you auto hit the boss, you get no weak point modifiers. The weak point modifiers also scale off the firearm that is your main. I can shoot one target. Now you'll notice I activated the fourth ability, and I'm hitting 3 targets. And while you're in fan service, you get to hit 3 targets. So just make sure that you have fan service active, and it doesn't really matter which ability you trigger your Fever Time. You can see I still have Fever Time, so I'm still hitting the 3 targets. And this is how to use this module. This is just a solely a damaging module. There is one extra thing, and that is this does use the stats on your gun. So you'll notice that I have Piercing Light on here. Weird choice, not really. And that is going to boil down to the modules used. This is essentially the most amount of damage that you're going to get out of here. You can put on a couple extra ones just in case, or squeeze out a little bit more damage. What does not trigger is multi-hit or crits. So anything that you put onto your gun that does multi-hitting or crits just means nothing for the build. You'll see multiplier on here right now. That's just because it's the only weak point damage multi-strike one I had leveled up in this Malachite slot. Why waste resources? The other ones just increase a crit or anything that doesn't matter to the build. Fire rate also does affect it, so you definitely want a fire rate module on your gun, and elemental damage does proc. Everything else is really up to you, but this is really the majority of damage you're getting out. You're going to want a tech reactor, and if you use Piercing Light, which is the best weapon to mount with the new Luna modules, it basically comes down to Piercing Light being able to do the most amount of basic damage on its firearm attack and chill attack. Yes, there is ATAMS. However, ATAMS doesn't have any element on the gun, so you can't really proc that. ATAMS is also a lot of the damage comes out of its unique ability, which you can't proc, and a lot of its damage comes out of its firearm critical hit damage, which you can't proc. Piercing Light is the best weapon to use for the new Luna module Battlefield Concert. You definitely want critical hit damage because we will be building her for critical hit damage. The tech skill power boost ratio, if you're bossing with her, you definitely want a Colossi attack on. I'm not dumping all those time and resources into another thing just to be on the leaderboards, just for someone to come by and just be better than me. Because her speedrunning kit requires a little bit of RNG and a lot of skill to be the best, if that makes sense. But you can get mad work done being, you know, average, which my general gameplays are just average skill base. The build for this module, you're definitely going to want to use the Enlightened Mage set. The Enlightened Mage set will give you the most amount of damage. Just make sure that before you proc your damage phase, that you do have 3 stacks of truth. This is a very large increase of damage for you, so just make sure that you have it. As far as the build, I do believe that this is the best build for bossing, and all you have to do is change off the Dangerous Ambush for an MP collector if you are not Colossi bossing, or any bossing, really. And then if you really want to risk it for the biscuit, this is a support tech, and the Dangerous Ambush can be left on, and you can have both and just remove your HP mod. No thanks. As far as the trigger module, we definitely want Gap in Time. Gap in Time does trigger on Luna, so this gives you a massive increase to your damage. And because we're having maximized skill on the build, you do get to trigger at 100% of the time. Now, maximized skill might seem bad on most builds, but you have no cooldowns on here, as long as you don't try to get too greedy with the skills, because they don't have any cooldown, unless you try to get too greedy, and then they have a 15-second cooldown. Even if you do mess up, it's not that big of a deal, because your buffs last longer than 15 seconds anyway. So as long as you're not sitting there messing up 3 times in a row, and even if you do mess up 3 times in a row, you can still gain your gauge. So really, there's no downside to using maximized skill. Please use maximized skill. The second module, Battlefield Artist, have a gun to use when you run out of mana. Any gun that you can use for multiple adds is probably the best choice, because you will be having 2 snipers on to maximize your damage. And if you want a little bit more damage out of the skill portion of your build, which will come in handy, you can use Arc Leak. She doesn't really typically use a ton of mana, so you don't really have to hold on to your mana like a gremlin. As far as reactors go, this is not the best reactor for this, but the majority of your damage is still coming out of firearms. So if you don't want to spend a whole bunch of resources on a whole new reactor, you don't have to, really. Like, I have skill critical hit damage. I very rarely skill hit critically on this build. You would still use tech, and really you would want a duration increase on here, or a range increase. For what Battlefield Artist does, it takes your inspiration and it takes the chance out of it. And every time you press anything, you get an inspiration gauge. The first one is for firearm attack. The first one is for firearm critical hit rate and critical hit damage. And the third one is for weak point. The more of the same notes you stack, the more diminishing returns you get. Here you have 15% per stack, and then the effect reduction rate on the first stack is 7%. This means the first time you activate it, you get 15%, and then the second time you'll get 8%, and then the next time you get 6%. So really, firearm attack, you shouldn't activate more than twice anyway, and then lethal inspiration is 15%, and then 8%, and then 6%. You really shouldn't activate more than 3 times. Skill critical hit rate is more important than firearm attack, especially with all these weapon cores and blah, blah, blah. And then the weak point attack, it does 25%, and then, of course, it halves to 12.5% increase from the 25%. This one as well, you should probably do 3 times. My typical rotation is 2, 3, 3. And then whenever you activate the song and cue the notes that you have stored up, you get the effects that you propagated. The fourth ability, Remix, it does skill damage. This is your ad clearing, essentially, so you don't really need an ad clearing weapon unless you're out of mana, which I get, you run out of mana. On the gun build, you'll see I have 38,000 shield. That is because overwhelming shield at 37,000, you basically max out all of your buffing capabilities to yourself and your allies. Down here says max shield 0.4, maxing out at 150%. But on Battlefield Artist, you're definitely going to want 37,000 shield, or at least close to it. If you fall short, it's a little shy. That's why we have all of the HP mods and overwhelming shield. And then I have duration twice, because duration is very important to make sure that your firearm damage throughput is maxed and your ally's firearm damage throughput is also maxed. Also, a passionate sponsor lasts 10 seconds, and so does your explosive inspiration, which gives you the ability. In all of your abilities, you have explosive inspiration. This is what increases the damage of your firearm. It has a cooldown of 0.3 as long as the enemy is in fact debuffed. So 0.3 is the maximum amount of seconds. That is simply why you can't just equip something with a massive amount of fire rate and go to town. This is why sniper rifles are king on Luna. Scout rifles would be good too, but you're not getting anywhere near the damage of sniper rifles. I really want to go over these modules because this is really what you want to do to maximize the throughput. When you shoot with dopaminergic activation, you get enough crit to fill the gap left by your modules that you don't have on, like better insight and things of that nature. If we go to a basic, it's 60. And then with it, it's 75. The base is 55%. So whenever I shoot once with dopaminergic activation, it triggers and I max out my critical hit rate and my firearm damage. Just make sure that you have them debuff, which you can do. Aim assist. And that did 250 million. But it's nice with the ATAMs, since you have to hit them while they have that debuff on them. While you're aiming down sights, you can actually still activate your abilities. Please do so. If you do not activate your ability with maximum inspiration gauge, you do not get the AoE. On here, it says that it buffs your allies. This is very important, and the reason Passionate Sponsor is on the build. Simply to use Passionate Sponsor, you have to buff your allies. So the 250 million ATAM shot, I didn't even have allies to buff. Important when you're increasing your firearm attack by 75%. This AoE will kill almost all of the red bars. I have yet to run into a red bar where it doesn't kill. And then, of course, the ATAMs will one-shot most boss phases. It will also one-shot the dropshits. As far as the external components go, I prefer the Ascending Armory sensor set. I have it on here because I would rather have 4 of them. I only use the Malevolent if I'm in a tight spot. This is like leftovers, or if I want to proc the Hollow Kuiper rounds and get just like the massive amount of damage out of the ATAMs as possible. So I really want the fire rate on the Shell Crusher if I'm going to rely on my Malevolent. If I don't, I really need sniper ammo because I'm just always shooting the sniper, so the Ascending Armory Auxiliary Power Unit is basically required. For the arc tuning on the firearm we have here, we go into a little bit multi-hit, but mostly firearm crit, And then there is nothing really for the Xantic module, but I have a feeling that in the future there will be. So I just unlocked it and left it here. Then for the arc tuning of the skill set, we have all of these. And then for here, you definitely want non-attribute cohesion. It will net you the most damage. It is important to note that the previous storm hanger runs I completed did not have this in it, so decrease the time further. If you are interested in the capability of the output, I will put my very scuffed run of the storm hanger inside of this VOD. But raw damage output, the piercing light. Anyway, that is the Ultimate Luna guide. Ultimate Luna is probably better than Serena for a lot of the content, in my personal opinion now, and she's just absolutely cracked. I highly recommend you take Ultimate Luna out there into the grounds. It will take you about 3 to 7 hours to farm her parts on average. I've done the math. Basically, 80 runs of any mission inside of the Axian Plains with your pity activated will net you all of the Ultimate Luna parts on average. Some people will just have to suck it up more, some people have to suck it up less. One person did it in 4 runs, which is just insane. That's not happening for you. Sorry. I did this on Twitch. I do a lot of stuff on Twitch. If you're interested, check me out in the comments, description. Y'all have a sick day and peace out. The proof of concept Stormhanger run is inside of the comments. Remember, it's done without a Colossi reactor, so it really should be done twice as fast, and it doesn't have the mutant cell slot. Enjoy!